Hello, Yankari here with another Warframe video. So this time I want to talk about some of the changes that DE has planned for Sanctuary Onslaught and for Khora. So with Sanctuary Onslaught, DE announced that enemy HP scaling was not working correctly. They had far less HP as intended, as you can see by this screenshot here. So this isn't really a big surprise if you watched my stream or played a lot of Sanctuary Onslaught. The enemies felt far too easy to kill and maybe like they weren't dealing quite enough damage. So it appears that enemies were actually maybe much lower level than the level that was displayed, but we were getting focus based on their displayed level in some way. So there's something fucky going on with that. Now I can kind of understand why they would want to fix that. However, I have some kind of objections to this or complaints. Now, two notes really, right? One is that they're talking about the focus rewards being too high. I think that's wrong. The focus rewards were perfect for this mode, and if they change the mode to be harder, right, in a way that reduces focus and affinity gains, that would ruin it, I think, frankly. You know, they talk about it being on par with Adaro stealth farming, and that's a good thing, right? Adaro stealth farming felt too grindy, too slow and painstaking, frankly. And Sanctuary Onslaught was actually a lot faster than Adaro. Maybe not a ton faster, kind of depends on, you know, your investment in lenses, but with a smaller investment in lenses, you could max out your focus in a single run of Sanctuary Onslaught that lasted less than it would have taken you to get a similar amount of focus in Adaro, right? So this was great. This was one of my favorite things about this change, and I'm definitely going to get on today in a little bit and play some more Sanctuary Onslaught before it changes and get that focus in. Because if focus takes any significant amount longer than it does to farm now in Sanctuary Onslaught, I think it's going to be really boring. It's at a pretty good level right now. You do one run, it takes you, like 18 to 30 minutes, kind of depending on your gear and how many waves you go. Maybe you do 2 runs if you don't have a greater focus lens, in a Warframe at least, or you don't have a very good like frame for it or whatever. But yeah, no, it's very easy, very convenient, and even without the better equipment, right? If you have crappier equipment, let's say you don't have greater lenses, you don't have an affinity booster running, you know, you're just like and you don't have like a perfect frame for it, then you're in this situation where it's still a bit of a grind to get focus in Sanctuary Onslaught, right? So that's okay, right, for not having the best equipment, but it's at the upper end of tolerable, in my opinion, right? The focus cap is fairly low for the amount of focus you need. You need millions of focus to complete the focus school waybounds alone. So I don't think it's unreasonable at all, the amount of focus we were getting from Sanctuary Onslaught. I think it's the right amount right now. And so DE's talking about readjusting it so we don't get as much focus, and I strongly object to that. If they want to make the mode harder, I'm fine with that. Sure, why not? If they want to, you know, make it so you can't get as far into it, all right, sure. However, the way that they are doing that, I really don't like. A lot of people are talking about them reducing enemy levels. I don't know if that's confirmed somewhere that I can't find it in here. I read this post a couple times, and unless my eyes are just glazing over the part where they talk about dropping enemy levels, they don't actually say that, so that may not be what is happening. However, I hope they don't do that. I would like to see the enemy levels stay the same, and they should just increase or fix the scaling. And if that results in people taking more time to grind up focus, right, because they don't kill enemies as fast, I think that the focus multipliers at the start of new zones should be increased to ensure that we keep getting focus as quickly as we do now in this mode. And the increased difficulty in time, well, maybe not time, because the rounds are still timed, right? They still have a specific amount of time that they last for. So not really increase in time, but increase in difficulty to get to higher waves is fine. Just don't screw us out of focus in the process. And the other thing is that I say it's fine, but it's not 100% fine to increase enemy difficulty in this way. I would actually, you know, it really made me notice something when I was playing Sanctuary Onslaught against enemies that were marked at this higher level that seemed easier to kill, which was that a lot of frames that would be less meta otherwise were very viable in this mode, right? I think if you're running Trinity and 3 Equinoxes, which is super good in Sanctuary Onslaught, in the future after they make it more difficult, it's going to be very easy to clear up to a similar level to what you can get to right now. It's not going to change too much because we have weapons that can, insta-gib or very quickly kill enemies up to level like 150, 200, or a little bit higher if you have a good weapon. And covert lethality, of course, is always there for you. And if you're running Equinox, you can use that to shoot into a group of enemies, just like take 2 shots and then clear the whole room. And if you have 3 Equinoxes, you just need Trinity to get off 1 EV, and then you have Blessing to keep you alive, right? And then you can bounce, you can trade maim stacks with Equinoxes until you get through to the next portal. And this is way more efficient than almost any other kill method I can think of. Maybe someone has noticed one that's better, but like it's very good in the current mode, and it's going to stay good because the damage scales with the HP of enemies. So when they improve the scaling on enemies, it's not going to change the effectiveness of this comp. But if you're going in there with random people, now, okay, going in there with random people should not be effective as doing a meta comp with your friends. However, I think it might become non-viable. That's the issue I have, right? I think it's kind of shitty for it to become non-viable to just kind of go in there and have fun. I'm not saying you should be able to get as far, but you should at least be able to get to wave 8. And the other thing is that some of these frames have like, I think maybe Saren is a good example, right? Because Saren has some difficulties with scaling into the late game. Like theoretically, she can scale with gas procs up to very, very high end, but still, nonetheless, she is better versus enemies with lower HP, right? She's going to get weaker when this comes out, even if she'll still be fairly useful. And there are other frames like that where they are effective up to a certain point, and they stop being effective because the enemies just have too much HP and they can absorb too much damage. And these frames stop being effective entirely. And right now, they are effective because they have good utility, and after this change, they'll probably be not effective. And so this kind of gave me this thought that, the enemy scaling we have in Warframe is really shitty. I mean, this has been a huge community complaint for a long time, and I think it would actually be really interesting if they looked into some different enemy scaling instead of just fixing it, right? Like, why not leave enemy HP where it's at, leave enemy armor scaling where it's at, leave the XP where it's at, and increase the damage that enemies deal, and increase the ratio of Eximus spawns to normal spawns, and increase the number of elite enemies that are difficult to deal with, and maybe add in some more elite enemy types that are annoying to deal with. Like, yeah, no one wants to deal with tons of nullifiers and scrambuses and fucking, no one wants to have like the Juggernaut added in there per se, but it's a way to increase the difficulty without just straight up adding more bullet sponginess, right? Because those enemies require slightly different strategies to deal with. Slightly different, at least. And in fact, another thing that would be really interesting, I think, I was kind of surprised there was nothing like this in the mode, would be adding something like the sortie modifiers, right? Obviously, you can't say like bows only in a wave that you just randomly get dropped into, but random modifiers to the modes could be really interesting. Like, what about increasing enemy speed like a Speed Nova does, as well as attack speed and damage, right? Movement speed, attack speed, damage, all buffed, right? That's one way to make enemies more difficult. In ways more than just damage buffing. I mean, also damage buffing, but more than just damage buffing them. Make them move faster and make them act faster. Maybe make them CC resistant in the sense that they recover from CC effects faster. So you blind an enemy for 20 seconds, they recover in 10 instead. That sort of thing. Instead of just giving them more and more and more HP. Let's see a new type of scaling in this mode. And I know that might take longer to implement, but I would love to hear from DE that they're just like thinking about doing something a little bit different for this mode that will still keep it difficult and keep it hard to get into the late tiers. Okay? So I think that's my whole rant on this, basically. It seems like the changes are going to make this mode less rewarding and kind of shittier to play because there's going to be better reasons to run meta comps. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with meta compositions. I love playing Equinox. I even kind of like playing Trinity sometimes. But it gets a little old, right? If you're playing the same thing over and over again, because it's good, nothing else really is. And I think that there's kind of a limited number of frames that are really good for Sanctuary Onslaught already, and they're going to limit that list even farther by this change, without really changing the difficulty that much. In effect, I think I could be wrong, but we'll see once I try out once they patch it and I get to try it out. So let's talk about Khora really quick. So like I said, Khora is kind of an afterthought at the end. As you can see here, I've hidden Venari because I think most of the other changes are kind of fine, right? They're not what I would do to change Khora, even if I was keeping her current kit. And honestly, I'm still disappointed that we don't have Exalted Whip. I think it would have been more interesting than Strangledome, especially if combined with something like her current kit. So Strangledome is hilarious though. So there is that value. So ability casting times have been shortened across the board. Great. Her ability casts were way too long. I hope they at least cut them in half, like 50, as much as natural talent is probably what she needs baseline. Whip Claw just benefits from combo counter, so it makes it a little bit stronger damage-wise, maybe enough to scale up to level 100 enemies, so that's kind of what I'd like to see for an ability like this. Let's see. Oh, the Strangledome synergy is kind of neat. You can just whip people in the Strangledome to deal damage out to other enemies in the Strangledome. So now she can kind of do some okay AoE damage. Still annoying to play with. You know, if your ally is playing her, it's going to be really annoying for you. But that's a lot better. And hitting ensnared enemies with Whip Claw causes it to propagate instead of dispelling your CC. So that's good. It's now synergy instead of anti-synergy. I see some people really misusing anti-synergy, but anti-synergy meaning like one ability counters the other ability in your kit. And that's what Whip Claw did intentionally before, which is just a very bizarre choice. Ensnare is better. It just ensnares more enemies and propagates outwards. It's just straight up buffed, and it was already much better than people are giving it credit for, in my opinion. I showed it off in some videos. I think it's pretty good, and with this change, it's going to be fantastic instead. Now, Venari, as far as I can tell, this is a nerf. This is like a significant nerf to Venari. They're fixing some bugs with mods that don't work, Kavat mods that don't work for her, which is a buff. However, they want to make her a passive, so she dies, and you have to revive her like a normal Kavat. Ugh. And then if you miss the window, she'll die until you revive again, like a Sentinel. Which is super bad compared to how she works right now. This is just way worse. I don't know why anyone would want this. A lot of people asked for it on Reddit, and I assume on the forums as well, but I have no clue why. It's terrible, and it doesn't fix any of the issues with Venari. Now, notably, the issues with Venari are that her offense and defensive modes are trash. I've seen people disagree with me on this. I'm not backing down. They're fucking garbage. There is no use for either of those modes. They don't do anything useful to you. Like, you want to try and argue with me about that? Go nuts. Change my mind, by all means. But I don't think it's possible. Because the reason for that is because I've tested them out. Venari does not do enough damage to matter, and that's because you only get Maul to increase the damage of your pets, really. Her base damage is shit, and she does not scale with power strength, so you can't just have like a super high power strength build that gets her to be good. She's like falls off after level 50 enemies, and even at level 50, she's not that good. This is terrible, and her defensive mode makes her disarm enemies one at a time. This is never useful, okay? Never. I mean, theoretically, sure, it just maybe reduces the incoming damage on you a tiny bit, but one enemy at a time is just not significant enough. I'm not sure I would count it as a truly good ability, even if it was a small AoE. If it was a small AoE, it's acceptable. You know, I wouldn't totally shit on it. However, it's not a small AoE, as it is now. And even if it was, you have to kind of count on the AI of your pet, which is terrible, for it to be useful, right? So instead, I would really like to see it be a buff. It could be damage reduction. It could be, I don't know, it could be armor buff. It could be something, just any kind of aura. It could be bonus HP, it could be flat bonus armor, it could be status resistance. Status resistance is great. And make it an aura for your team, and make it affinity range, okay? None of this, like, fucking Venari has to be, like, close to you shit for this. For the healing, I can kind of understand it, because healing is really good and limited in Warframe. But, not for the fucking defensive thing. Please make it an aura. For her attack mode, it either needs to be an aura, or it needs to do something way more significant than it does. Maybe it doubles Venari's attack speed from a normal Kavat, and has some sort of power, strength, scaling, damage component that's like percentile of enemies' HP. You know, the rate at which your Kavat kills things, if she just straight up one-shot enemies like a covert lethality dagger, it probably wouldn't be overpowered. So something with that, right? It could be a buff to your ability, or it could just make Venari kill shit just very, very effectively. At least let her be effective up to level about 120 enemies in the offensive mode if you have high power strength, right? Like, if you're running 300% power strength and you've got all the pet mods maxed out and you're in offensive mode, she should be useful against the highest level enemies that you can ever see in the star map, meaning the max level enemies and sorties. So, at least. Infinite scaling is always nice, but it's not totally essential. And she deals slash damage now, which is a tiny bit better and kind of works with some things, but okay, so that's enough of a rant on that. I just think that this change to her is a nerf. This Venari is probably the worst ability that Khora has right now, and it's just going to get even shittier with these changes. Now, Strangledome, it's still gonna split enemies apart. It's still not what you really want to do in Warframe. But it is a hilarious ability. The Whip Claw changes make it a lot better. And they say they're going to do something else neat with it. Assuming that something else they're going to do with it is like gives you enough variety, sure, okay, then I think it's fine. I really wish you could cancel it intentionally. That's one thing, because it can be very much get in your way instead of help you. So, you know, it could be fine. It could be fine. Personally, I'd love to see Ensnare be able to cast on Strangledome and then, like, collapse the dome and suck all the enemies into a ball. Which, you know, maybe treads a little bit on Nidus's toes, but it would be very good. So there is that. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, most of the changes sound good. It's just that Strangledome is very like counter to what you want to actually accomplish in Warframe, which is kill all the enemies as fast as possible. And Venari is just useless. She doesn't do anything good. Now she's going to be irritating and useless, and she dies pretty easily. So, yeah. I don't know. Maybe she needs better base stats plus her abilities that you rotate between to actually do something, and then maybe don't make her a passive or let us spend energy when she's dead to revive her, right? That's fine. You could even be like way more energy, 200 energy. I don't care. You know, just don't make us walk over there and do the whole fucking revive thing every 2 seconds because she's dying constantly. That's my opinion. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below if you agree or not. I'm sure some people agree with some opinions. There's got to be at least one person watching who doesn't think Venari is total shit. Or maybe that doesn't. I don't think it's a very supportable viewpoint. And especially let me know about the Sanctuary Onslaught changes. I actually care about those a lot more than the changes for Khora, although it's going to be interesting being able to actually retest out Khora, and I'm waiting to make a guide to her for her actual change, like final changes to go through, so we can see what her final state's going to be like. But yeah, I really hope that they don't do exactly what they're saying they're going to do with Sanctuary Onslaught, and they maybe do something a little more interesting, or at least please promise us something like a tiny bit more interesting, you know, like in the future, with like different enemy scaling or fucking something. Please, that would be great. All right, thank you all for watching. Yakri out.